The Golden Age, of course, took place when we were children. There were 5 of us, brothers and sisters, and we were orphans. And those who had taken charge of us were our aunts and our uncles, our elders, and therefore, they thought, our betters. I must confess, we didn't love them any more than they loved us. We didn't respect them. We envied them because of their freedom, but we pitied them more because they seemed unable to make good use of it. They were like Olympian gods, powerful and capricious. But we were children, and the Golden Age, that was ours.
The Golden Age by Kenneth Grahame. Dramatised for radio by Martin Wade. With James Fleet as the man, Jesse Jeune as the boy, and Marcia Warren as Miss Smedley. With music specially composed by Elizabeth Parker. The Golden Age.
To begin quite near the end, it came to pass in the year 1870 or thereabouts that there went out a decree from Uncle Thomas. Of all our several uncles, it was the one named Thomas whom we saw the most, and his decree was that we should all gather in the schoolroom to receive a special announcement.
Children.
Yes, Uncle Thomas?
I have some good news. Sit down. Oh, there are only 3 of you.
Well, Edward's gone away for his education.
Yes, I'm aware of that. Boarding school. No, I never was.
Uncle Thomas, I should have warned you, regarded himself as a humorist. But he was mistaken about that, as indeed about so many things.
What of Harold, though? Where's he?
I'm afraid he was looking for tadpoles in the pond and he fell in.
And I didn't push him.
He's being attended to by Martha, but he'll be here soon.
Well, I won't wait. Time and tide and so forth. As I say, I bring you good news. Charlotte.
Yes, Uncle Thomas?
I am advised that you are to learn French.
French? Oh.
You want to commence next week? La semaine prochaine. Yes, life is real. Life is earnest. And French begins on Monday.
Oh.
You see, Charlotte, you have come of age. When you were a child, you acted like a child. But now you are to study French from Monday.
Is that the good news?
It is, in part. But there is more. Concerning the toys.
The toys? Which particular toys, Uncle Thomas?
All the toys. Charlotte is the youngest of you. She is, as we have agreed, putting aside childish things. Ergo, the toys, all the toys, are entirely redundant.
What is to happen to them?
Well, I shall explain. I have recently been to London on a mission.
A mission. Ah, yes. Our self-important Uncle Thomas was, I think, a veritable missionary. One week he might be running down to the stores, the next placing an advertisement for a maid. Such tasks lent much colour to his vacant life.
While I was in town, I took the trouble to visit the Hospital for Orphans in Poplar, for it struck me that this was just the place where your toys should go, now that they are entirely redundant.
The toys are to go to the hospital for orphans?
Correct.
And they won't come back?
Correct. You are orphans, too, of course. But these poor waifs and strays are orphans far less fortunate than yourselves, and your toys, I assure you, will gladden their hearts and bring a sparkle to their eyes.
When will the toys go?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Oh. I'm sorry I'm late.
They have all been collected up.
I got wet.
Yes, so I heard. They have been placed in a crate, and the crate will be taken in the morning. Any more questions? Good.
Crate? What crate? A crate of toys. Whose toys? My toys.
Our toys. We're about to lose them.
I considered myself, I frequently declared myself, too big for toys. I had inherited the collection from Edward and Selina, and I had been happy, relatively happy, that in accordance with the right of succession, my lease of the toys had passed on to Harold, and thence to Charlotte. But the point was, the toys were still there to be borrowed, should a slight relapse occur on a rainy afternoon. The point was, the decision about what to do with them should have been left to us. The toys, I say, were ours.
Leotard in his glass box, my favourite, Leotard the acrobat.
Whose hands eternally grasped the bar of a trapeze, and who swung supple-sinewed in a variety of improbable directions.
And Noah's Ark.
With its motley crew of unpaired, dismembered beasts who came in disproportionate sizes.
And Jerry, and Rosa, and the other dolls.
None of whom were close to me, of course, but whose purpose in life, now that they were about to go, I fully appreciated. The toys had been with us always. To lose them was to lose a substantial portion of our past.
Mrs. Dobson is ill.
Yes, so I heard.
Milk?
I think we ought to visit her very soon.
Milk, Selina.
I beg your pardon, Edward. What did you say?
I was asking my sister for the milk.
No, Edward, you were demanding the milk in a thoroughly ill-mannered fashion. Leave the table.
But
Leave the table at once.
When should we visit Mrs. Dobson?
Tomorrow.
Why tomorrow?
Parce que bientôt elle sera morte.
Mort?
Oui.
Quel dommage.
We began the story, perversely, near the end. But now, you'll be pleased to know, we are nearer to the beginning. These ladies whose conversation you have just overheard were my aunts, and we lived with them in the country. Uncles might come and uncles might go. Some came and went as quickly as they could, but Aunts Eliza and Maria, as befitted Olympians, were eternally present.
I can't visit Mrs. Dobson tomorrow, no matter how ill she is.
Why not?
Well,
Selina?
Dearest sister,
Yes?
be so good as to pass the milk.
Certainly.
the fact is, I'm visiting someone else.
Oh, yes. Who?
Mr. Hodgetts.
The identity of Mr. Hodgetts will soon be made plain. But I must take you first through the back door of our aunt's house and into the garden. Olympians, being Olympians, failed to appreciate the garden and managed nothing better than to sit in it or walk very slowly around it. We children, on the other hand, climbed its trees and dabbled in its pond. We exercised our imagination upon the place, transported it to the furthest regions of the globe. One day it was an expanse of the frozen north. The next,
A tropical island. I've been washed up here and I'm just a cabin boy, but I'm the ship's sole survivor. Heaven help me. How will I live? Who will come and rescue me?
and what chance was there of seeing a tiger seized by a crocodile at the water's edge, as illustrated in all reputable picture books? Oh, dream days. A golden age, when we were children, when there were toys.
Now, Jerry, you shall sit next to Rosa and you shall be very good, or I won't tell you the story. Once upon a... Jerry, you naughty creature, what did I just say?
Charlotte, for heaven's sake.
For heaven's sake, what?
How can I be a cabin boy all alone on a tropical island when you're shouting your head off at Jerry?
Well, I'm trying to tell the dolls a story, but Jerry here refuses to behave. I mean, look at him.
My tropical island had faded from view. I sat next to Charlotte and scrutinized the offending Jerry, who lay slumped against Rosa, his fellow doll, in an excessively familiar fashion.
Do you know why Jerry's called Jerry?
His real name's Jerome.
That's right, and that's because he's like the man in the picture that's halfway up the stairs. You know, the holy man in the cave with the lion.
The resemblance, to be truthful, was not striking. The sole point of similarity was that Jerry, like St. Jerome, had lost much of his hair.
Well, if Jerry looks like a holy man, he ought to act like one too. Sit up, Jerry, now.
He was encouraged with difficulty to do so, and the storytelling resumed.
Once upon a time, Alice saw some playing cards having a game of croquet. And the Queen of Hearts said, "Off with her head." But Alice replied, "I'm not scared of you. You're nothing but a pack of cards." Oh, I've got to the end already, and I'd hardly begun.
There was no prospect, however, of Jerry hearing a second tale. The reprobate had keeled over again and was nestling against Rosa's plump, smiling form with an expression of sublime innocence on his face.
I suppose he's in love.
Perhaps he is, but it's no excuse for bad behaviour. Aunt Maria's in love, you know, with Mr. Hodgetts, the new curate. Or is it the new curate who's in love with her?
9 o'clock. Edward and I, this was several months, you must understand, before my brother was packed off to school. He and I were in our nightshirts, leaning out of the bedroom window
Move up a bit.
and watching the shadows of the cedar tree playing on the moonlit lawn. From the drawing room came the sound of the Olympians enjoying themselves in their feeble fashion.
Now you and I have got to run like hell.
Strange how the aunts still laugh at that joke, even though they've heard it 100 times.
Yes, I suppose they must try and forget about it in between.
So, Mr. Hodgetts, are you ready to sing for us?
Oh, no!
Come, Mr. Hodgetts. My sister says you have a lovely voice.
Oh, that's very kind of her.
Mr. Hodgetts, you can't possibly be worse than your predecessor.
All in a garden green, two lovers sat at ease.
This Mr. Hodgetts, it seems, is getting rather friendly with Aunt Maria.
Yes, Charlotte thinks so too. But isn't Aunt Maria very old?
25 at least. It's not her he's after, it's her money.
Oh, didn't realise she had any.
Heaps.
We never see it.
True.
We continued to gaze out of the window. I was pondering the question of the moneys that might be owing to me from Aunt Maria, and the numerous items of confectionery that they'd purchased, when a flood of golden lamplight suddenly mingled with the moon rays, and Aunt Maria and Mr. Hodgetts strolled out alone onto the lawn.
There, you see?
Of course, being a curate, he might be talking to her about loaves and fishes, or about Esau being a hairy man.
No, Aunt Maria has no interest in Bible stories. Why she goes to church, I can't imagine. Oh, they're heading for the golden seat. We'll never be able to hear them now. We'll have to send the kid down. Harold, are you awake?
Don't think he is. Seems a bit unfair.
Nonsense. Harold, wake up.
It would be an exaggeration to say that Harold was delighted at being ejected from his bed, or that he was particularly interested in the assignment he was given. But he was a staunch enough lad, was Harold, well disciplined.
Must I go?
Yes, you must.
Harold got up onto the windowsill and descended by the route which was customary when we wished to avoid public notice, down onto the iron trellised porch and thence onto the gravel path. Like a white rat he travelled, and his nightgown glimmered briefly before he disappeared into the shrubbery. But he was not so quiet about his scampering as he ought to have been.
Who's there?
Oh, Mr. Hodgetts, who can it be?
Well, Miss Duchess, I intend to find out. Come on, show yourself.
Oh, do be careful, Mr. Hodgetts, for my sake.
For your sake, Miss Duchess, I will. Oh, there you are.
Ow!
It's one of your boys.
Good gracious! By the way, they're not my boys, Mr. Hodgetts. I'm merely in loco parentis.
Oh, let me go!
Harold, what on earth do you think you're doing out here?
Edward and I, having discovered that Harold had fallen into enemy hands, immediately decided that he couldn't be abandoned. We climbed down quickly from the bedroom, crawled through the bushes, and were soon within a few yards of the Olympians and their prisoner.
Right, this is close enough.
What are we going to do?
No idea.
Now listen to me, you little bastard. Urchin, either you tell me what you were up to,
Let go of my ear!
or else...
Or else I'll ask Uncle Thomas to give you a good thrashing.
Let go of me then, I'll tell you!
The truth?
I promise!
You won't lie any more than you can help?
I promise!
Very well. Proceed.
This should be interesting. I had just been saying my prayers. There's the first light, I think. And I got up and looked out of the window. And there, on the lawn, I beheld a sight which froze the marrow in my veins. A burglar was approaching the house with snake-like tread. He had a scowl and a dark lantern, and he was armed to the teeth. You know, this isn't Harold's usual style. You're right, but it seems familiar somehow.
Proceed.
Pausing in his stealthy career, the burglar gave a low whistle. Like that. Instantly, the signal was responded to. Like that.
Yes, yes.
From the adjacent shadows, a pair of figures glided forth. These miscreants, like their companions, were armed to the teeth. Of course, that's Helen the Penny Dreadful that Bobby Ferris lent us. Not quite word for word, but a good effort. The robber chief, having been reunited with his nefarious comrades, conversed with them in murmuring tones. His expression was ferocious. And oh, I ought to have said that he was armed to the teeth.
You did?
Never mind about his teeth.
I was in a frightful funk. But just then, the two of you egressed, that's the term, I think, from out of the drawing room, and the ghastly trio vanished silently into the bushes, with horrid implications.
You've made all this up.
No, honestly, I haven't. Well, that is the truth, since someone else did.
Why didn't you inform an adult as soon as you could?
Because I was afraid perhaps I might not be believed. Clever answer, that.
Tell me, Harold, how did you get out here?
How did I get out here? Well... This could be awkward. Yes. Well...
The front door is already locked, and you certainly didn't come through the drawing room.
We'll have to create a diversion. Get ready to move.
What was that?
Oh, it's those burglars.
Quick!
We dashed back towards the house, and so did Harold. Glancing over my shoulder, I saw that it was taking the curate a while to decide whether the burglars should be pursued. While he dithered, a terrified Aunt Maria flung herself upon him.
Oh, Mr. Hodgetts.
Oh, Miss Dages.
Oh, you are brave, I know it. You are very brave. Oh, but please, for my sake, do not be rash.
The following day, while I was by the duck pond, recalling to mind a famous incident in the history of early Rome, Mr. Hodgetts came visiting again. But Aunt Maria was out, and he could find no reason why he should stay. As he was departing, he caught sight of me.
Morning.
Morning, Mr. Hodgetts.
What are you doing?
Thinking
About what?
about how, if this pond had a bridge over it, I'd find it much easier to reenact the courageous single-handed resistance of Horatius Cocles against the entire Etruscan army under Lars Porsena.
Ah, yes. Lars Porsena of Clusium. By the 9 gods he swore.
That's him. I hear that you've been rather courageous too.
Oh, with the burglars, you mean? Nonsense. It was nothing.
You frightened them away. You dealt with them single-handed like Horatius.
Well,
You've become famous. Your deed of valor has won you renown.
He looked at me, torn between pride and an innate distrust of children.
Well, must be off.
He nodded at me and headed for the gate. When he was almost, but not quite, out of earshot, I murmured the words he had heard the night before.
You are brave, I know it, but please, for my sake, do not be rash.
He stopped. He turned. But I was already preparing, un-Horatius-like, to sprint away, and he knew he'd never catch me.
The dog bit the man. The dog is the subject, bit is the verb, so what, Harold, is the object?
Well, it can't be the man.
Wrong. Stupid child.
But a man's not an object, Miss Smedley. A man's a person.
Miss Smedley, you may have conjectured, was our governess. another of those that dwelt on Olympus. A woman, it seemed to us, without accomplishments or charms, without any characteristic indeed except for an inbred viciousness.
Charlotte, why are you crying?
She's upset, Miss Smedley, because you informed her that there are no such things as fairies.
Perhaps I should tell her a story.
Why, Edward?
To cheer her up. This one's about some storks and ducks. There was once a fellow who had 2 storks, and one of them died.
Died?
Oh.
Which one of them died? The she-stork. What did she die of?
Quiet.
She died of consumption, but the ducks lived happily ever after.
Quiet. Edward, you've got yourself into a very boisterous and frivolous mood. May I ask why?
Edward was unwilling to offer Miss Smedley an explanation for his behaviour, but I knew.
It must be catching Edward's in love now. How can you tell? 1, his conduct in lessons. 2, his rabbit's not been fed.
Not been fed?
For 2 whole days, and when I pointed this out to him, he said, I don't care, you can feed her if you like.
Are you feeding her?
Yes, of course. Humans die of love, apparently, but I don't see why rabbits should. We mustn't let this go on, though.
Mustn't we?
Apart from the effects on himself, it's unfair on the rest of us. We can't fight properly against pirates or the French if one of us is besotted.
Unsure as to how to treat Edward's condition, I hurried off to the kitchen in order to consult Martha. Martha was our cook, and she was not an Olympian.
What's needed, my dear, is a nice slice of this walnut cake I baked this morning.
Will that cure him?
Goodness me, no, but it'll fix that little gap that's in your tummy.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Have you ever been in love, Martha?
Yes, my dear, I've been in love.
And did you find a cure for it?
No, I'm afraid I didn't.
Do you mean you're not cured yet?
Well, to be truthful, I don't think I am. But life goes on.
Yes, I suppose it does. Well, must be off.
As you wish, my dear. And if you ever do find a cure, you'll tell me, won't you?
I was informed that Edward was in the orchard, carving initials on the trees, perhaps, and without much optimism I sent Harold to interview him. My instructions were that Harold should commence proceedings with a report on the general health of our rabbits, that he should glide gently into a discussion of rabbits in general, their customs and vices, and should pass thence by a natural progression to the female sex, both animal and human, and its various deficiencies. Harold was not gone for long, and when he returned he was in tears.
What's the matter? What went wrong? Did you start by mentioning the rabbit as directed?
Yes, I did. I said that Edward's rabbit reminds me of Sabina Larkin.
Sabina Larkin, I should inform you, was a 9-year-old damsel, the child of a neighbouring farmer.
Why does it remind you of Sabina Larkin?
That's obvious, isn't it? It has spindly legs, and it twitches its nose in a snooty way. And when I said as much to Edward, he suddenly got very cross and he punched me in the ribs. He's a brute, and I wish I was a brute, a bigger brute than he is.
I must make a small confession here. I was in love myself with an older woman, the baker's wife. My roving fancy had settled on Mrs. Pascoe's mature charms one long morning in church, while I was under the exceptional strain of reciting the Athanasian Creed. My love, though, was different. My love was restrained, almost philosophical. Admittedly, it necessitated frequent visits to the baker's shop, but it threatened no drastic consequences other than a drain on the exchequer. I was certain, however, that Edward's affliction was of a very different order. It was a volcanic passion that was on the verge of erupting and interfering severely with our day-to-day business. But what could be done?
You asked to see me, Aunt Eliza?
Yes, you and I are going out. So first you must wash your face and hands. How have you got yourself so dirty?
Well, I was...
Go! Now, wash! and be ready to depart in a quarter of an hour. We are visiting the Larkins first.
The remedy for Edward's ailment came quite by chance on the following Sunday. I should inform you that it was Aunt Eliza's obnoxious practice to issue forth on a Sunday afternoon and to make a visit of state to such farmers and villagers who dwelt at hand. And when she did so, she invariably took with her one of her unfortunate nephews. This was a vile, vicious punishment of hers. Added to the weariness of morning and evening worship, it made the Lord's Day a most unforgiving one. But it's an ill wind.
Miss Datches.
Mr. Larkin.
How very good of you. And the boy, too. Well, you must come in, I suppose.
Only 2 short days ago, Farmer Larkin and I had confronted each other across a hedge. He in a state of wrath because I had caused a stampede of his cows.
God damn you, you little brat! God damn you, I'll whip the bloody hide off you!
But now, so powerful is formality, he and I found ourselves sitting side by side and calmly exchanging remarks about the mutability of the weather. His daughter, meanwhile, apparently absorbed in an illustrated edition of Pilgrim's Progress, repelled Aunt Eliza's attempts at conversation with a frigid silence.
You are, I think, a very well-behaved child, Sabina, and a good-natured one also. I wish I could say as much for my eldest nephew, Edward. He despises little girls, I'm afraid. Only the other day I heard him tell Charlotte that he'd happily exchange her for an admiral's hat. He's quite heartless.
There was no reply from Miss Larkin, but she looked up from a brightly coloured representation of Christian upon the hill called Error, and she stiffened, and her tip-tilted nose twitched, like the nose on Edward's rabbit.
So pleasant to see you. Goodbye. Goodbye.
The service that evening had been shorter than usual, on account of the fact that Mr. Hodgetts dropped 2 pages of his sermon as he ascended the pulpit. It was strange, I thought, that during the oration itself, neither the curate nor the adult members of the congregation seemed to notice any discontinuity of ideas when he suddenly leapt from page 4 to page 7.
Goodbye.
Edward and I shuffled into the porch.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Mr. Hodgetts. Excellent sermon. Thank you.
What? Oh, not at all.
Instinctively, I made my way towards freedom, but Edward, of course, was hovering, waiting for Sabina Larkin to appear, anticipating a repeat of the benediction he'd received from her at the end of the morning service.
I ought to warn you, Edward.
Warn me?
Things may have changed a little since this morning.
What do you mean?
But there wasn't time to explain. Miss Larkin appeared. Miss Larkin approached. Miss Larkin turned to Edward, put out her tongue at him, and then passed swiftly by.
Edward!
Edward! What? Oh, yes, Miss Smedley.
Ammo.
Oh, yes, Miss Smedley. It means I love.
Correct. Conjugate it for me, please, in the pluperfect passive.
Pluperfect passive? I don't think I've completely mastered the pluperfect passive.
Then master it! Completely!
Poor Edward, conjugating ammo of all verbs, and in the pluperfect passive, I had been loved. Relieved as I was that the love crisis was over, I felt that Edward deserved some sympathy too, but there was little time for commiseration.
Miss Smedley.
Oh, yes, Miss Datches.
Forgive me for interrupting, but when the lesson is finished, would you please make sure that the children assemble in the drawing room? Their Uncle William has arrived from India, and he is anxious to make their acquaintance.
Uncle William. This was a new uncle on us, but our hopes for him were not excessively high, since other uncles had been weighed in the balance and found to be grievously wanting. Uncle Thomas, whose deficiencies you will already have recognised. Uncle George, who promised much, not least a pair of pink-eyed Guatemalan guinea pigs, but who lost all interest in us after discovering Miss Smedley. And now there was Uncle William, who was anxious to make our acquaintance. I have to say, he didn't look it.
Uncle William?
Yes?
My name is Selina, and these are my brothers and sisters.
Pleased to meet you.
Well, how are we all?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
Me too.
And me.
And me, but Edward here may be just a little off colour on account of ammo.
What? Someone's been shooting at him?
No, ammo I love.
Glad to see me, eh?
Don't know, really.
What Charlotte means, I think, is that she's never met you before.
And therefore it's a little too early to form an opinion about you.
We looked at each other. We looked at Uncle William. He was turning red with embarrassment.
Right then.
And he left the room. He stayed for 5 days altogether, and during the whole time that he was with us, the cloud of tension never lifted. We tried our best to be pleasant with him.
Bad news?
Uncle William?
What bad news? Tell me.
Harold, perhaps he'd rather not talk about his experiences in the subcontinent at the moment.
Well, he can't leave it much longer. He's leaving after lunch.
No. Another month here. A month.
Uncle William!
Oh, please, God, no. I do apologize. I was having a nightmare.
Uncle William?
Yes?
What was India like?
India? Oh, India. Yes. Wonderful, wonderful country. I wish I could go back. I can't sit around here all morning. Will you excuse me? I must go off and see if I can organize.
Martha?
Yes, my dear.
We'd like to use the potato cellar if we may.
Oh, important meeting, is it?
Very important. We have to make a judgment on Uncle William. Decide if he was good or bad.
Oh, I see. Well, he ate a lot of my blueberry tart, so there must be some good in him.
Uncle William had departed, gone to the station, and Edward had decided that we should meet in the potato cellar, where all our major decisions were made, in order to reach a verdict on him. Edward had already confided the suspicion that at some point during his career Uncle William must have committed a stupendous crime. But I wasn't so sure. Once or twice during his stay I had caught him looking at us very shyly with an expression that was halfway towards benevolence. All that he was guilty of, in my opinion, was a strong desire to be somewhere else. India, preferably.
Where's Harold?
He had to go with Uncle William to the station to see him off.
Oh, never mind. I'm sure he'll agree with the verdict. My view is Uncle William was a criminal.
Well,
I think
he was a beast. He never even got us a half holiday.
perhaps he didn't know about half holidays.
He didn't seem to know much about anything. Or if he did, he wasn't telling.
Well then, that concludes the debate. Let's vote. Those in favour of Uncle William.
But proceedings were interrupted by the sudden arrival of Harold.
I'm back!
Hot foot from the station. His face hinted at miraculous events.
What's happened? Has he changed his mind and returned?
No.
Oh, thank heavens for that.
Harold stared at each one of us in turn, then put his hand into his pocket and pulled out
1,
2, 3, 4, 5 half-crowns.
5 half-crowns?
But why, Harold?
Did you save his life?
No. All I did was talk to him about trains and such like, and how I seen the station boarder kissing Martha's sister. But he didn't seem to be listening. And I'm not certain, but I thought I heard him say quietly to himself, "Well, thank God that's over." And then he shoved the half-crowns into my hand. in a frightened sort of way. "These are for you and the other kids," he said. "Buy what you like, stuff yourself silly, but don't tell the grown-ups. Now hoof it." So I hoofed it.
He was a truly good man, a holy man, perhaps like St. Jerome. I hope he dies tonight. He'll go straight to heaven.
I called him a beast. A beast. Oh, I am so sorry.
I know what we'll do. We'll christen Farmer Larkin's piebald pig after him. That'll show how much he's appreciated.
I'm afraid the pig's already been christened. It's called Mr. Hodgetts.
Mr. Hodgetts, you christened it Mr. Hodgetts after all the damage he did to your ear?
But yesterday he bowled to me while he was waiting for Aunt Maria to get herself ready.
Well, we'll just have to undo that christening, I'm afraid. Come on, we'll perform the ceremony straight away.
Our toys, as I have said, were always there. They always had been there. They were inextricably linked to our lives. And yet, deep as their roots were, the purpose and identity of the toys could alter from day to day. Take Noah's Ark, for instance. Whether it was ever the Ark, I can't be sure, but it was many other vessels. Nelson's flagship, Drake's Golden Hind, the Hesperus that got wrecked in the poem. And on this particular day...
It's the Argo, and I'm Jason, and the animals are the rest of the crew. We're about to sail off and capture the Golden Fleece with help of Medea and her magic charms. So don't go bothering us.
It's not much of an Argo, is it?
Well, I can't help that. It's the best sort of Argo I can manage. Your problem, Edward, is just that you're no good at pretending.
Look, why don't we get a real boat?
You see? Harold's right. You can't pretend.
We'll get a real boat and we'll take it up the river and we'll find Medea and the Golden Fleece and we'll bring them both back. And Harold can be Jason since he thought of it first.
We're not allowed on the river by ourselves.
No, and Jason wasn't allowed either, I dare say, but that didn't stop him.
How will we get the boat?
We'll take Farmer Larkin's.
You mean we'll get his permission?
If you like, but I'm not asking
Nor
him.
me.
Nor me. We'll just take it then.
We set off across the fields. We passed by Farmer Larkin's pigs, paying our respects as we did so to Uncle William, formerly Mr. Hodgetts, and made our way down to the river. We called it a river, but in truth it was more of a stream, a stretch of water not to be discovered in an atlas, and far too narrow for a boat to be turned without fear of shipwreck. No matter. For us, today, it became the wine-dark waters of the Aegean. Upstream we rode, since that way led us out of Larkin's kingdom. The Isle of Lemnos was fringed with meadowsweet. Dog roses dotted the Thracian coast, and haymakers could soon be espied along the shores of the Hellespont. After an hour or two's seafaring, the Argo's speed slowed. The vessel became embedded in mud.
We're here. This is Colchis. Here Medea the sorceress lives. Here lives the dragon, which watches night and day under the tree with the fleeces hung. Here!
I'm exploring!
And Edward jumped ashore and strode off without waiting to see who would follow. But I had caught sight of a moss-grown water gate nearby, and the gate led into a garden. The air in the garden was very still. Harold had followed me, but at first he hung back a little, shamefaced, as if we were entering a private chamber. Flowers were everywhere, but they drooped and sprawled in the overgrowth. The scent of heliotrope possessed the place.
Look, asunder!
Where do you wind it up? And what does the writing say?
Time trieth truth.
What does that mean?
I'm not sure.
Stand back. I'm going to climb it.
Harold had a cat-like fondness for the summit of things. The sundial might not tell the time, having wound quite down, but at least it could be surmounted. While Harold climbed, I became aware of someone moving slowly along the path from the house. Dark-haired she was, and pale, and listless.
Medea.
Well, we were the Argonauts, and we had arrived at Colchis, so Medea she must be. The make-believe demanded it.
Medea the sorceress.
Where? Oh!
Harold turned suddenly, lost his balance.
Oh, poor boy. See how you scraped your little chin. Oh, sweet child.
It's kind of you to worry about him, but really, it's not necessary. He's not like Charlotte. He'll cry for just 15 seconds in total, and then he'll be all right. Another 5 should do it. You see?
Strange boys. From what mysterious region have you descended? Oh, how wonderfully dirty you are. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. I've been closed away here for 1,000 years.
1,000 years?
Let's play at something. Now.
Rounders is a good game, but we need a bat and ball.
A bat and a ball? I don't have a bat and a ball.
And some more people too.
More people? Oh, yes, we certainly need more people. Oh, never mind. We'll have a race instead. Up to the walnut tree. I haven't run for a century.
We raced, and she was so easy of victor that I began to wonder whether she had not exaggerated her age by a year or two. And then we played hide and seek, and she played with all the gusto and abandonment of the true artist. Tired at last, we strolled back to the old sundial.
It says on the side, time trieth troth. Please, what does that mean?
Time trieth troth. That's why they shut me up here. They think in time that I'll forget him. I never will. And perhaps he will never forget me. Though I don't know. It's been so many years. So many years.
Lucy! Lucy!
A woman was approaching from the house. A woman wearing mittens. A woman so old that the years Medea had claimed might well have belonged to her.
Lucy!
A woman whose tone of voice had aunt written in large letters all over it. Medea started up guiltily.
You've been crying. Why? And pray, who are these exceedingly dirty little boys?
They're friends of mine. I asked them to come.
Well, they must run off home for their tea, and they should remember in future not to pay visits without a nursemaid.
Medea was led towards the house, and just before she went indoors, she turned and kissed her white hand to us.
What a dragon the old woman is. Yes, but Medea is a brick. I wish we could carry her off. We could if Edward was here.
Perhaps. But Edward, when he returned, had lost all interest in Medea and the Golden Fleece. We, latter-day Argonauts, therefore, we returned empty-handed, and Medea remained unrescued, shut away in the house along with her memories.
7 times 7?
47.
Wrong. Think again.
47.
No, Harold, 47 is wrong.
Well, I disagree.
No, Harry, you would not disagree.
7 sevens have always been 47, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, Charlotte, why are you crying?
Because Miss Smedley...
Why is she crying?
No, I do, Miss Smedley. The fact that she's a girl may explain it.
Selina, please encourage your sister to stop crying.
I'll try, Miss Smedley. Don't cry, Charlotte.
Oh. Now, Harold, 7 times 7.
47.
Wrong. You stupid child. Answer's 49.
Well, I don't see why.
Then you shall have to find out why, won't you? On your own, in the schoolroom, at the end of the lessons.
But
Quiet! Put your pencils down. I have an announcement to make. Oh, Charlotte, please, why are you crying?
Because 47 was the answer I got.
Oh, well, never mind that now. Children, I have to tell you that in 2 weeks' time, I am departing this place.
Departing? Departing, Miss Smedley?
Yes, Selina.
Forever?
Yes, Edward. Oh, Charlotte.
She's going. Hooray! After all that we've endured, All the boredom, all the insults.
After all that, she's going! Hooray!
The tyrant is laid low.
Hooray!
It was now a full week since Miss Smedley's departure had been announced, and the resultant ecstasy was quite undiminished, among the boys, I mean. There are crueler instructors than Miss Smedley, of course, but we weren't to know, and therefore we revelled blindly in contemplation of her supposed crimes and malignities. We mapped out the shining days to come, and under Edward's masterly direction, we planned a practical expression of the popular sentiment.
The new flag which Martha gave us will fly it over the hen house on the day Miss Smedley leaves. Hooray! And we'll have a bonfire all ready, and we'll light it, and we'll have firecrackers too.
And the dogs can all wear ribbons.
I still can't quite believe it.
Nor me, she's going.
Hooray!
On the morning of the fateful day, we assembled in the schoolroom. Charlotte was in tears. Selina was in tears.
Selina, Charlotte.
Yes, Miss Smedley.
Stop it, please.
Yes, Miss Smedley.
First things first. There will be no lessons today.
No lessons?
Now that, I thought, was unfair of Miss Smedley. In my view, we should have been obliged to struggle to the last in a confused, angry medley of latitudes, longitudes, and thoroughly imperfect tenses. Flushed with hatred, we should have fought the final battle over the dismembered corpse of a multiplication table.
No lessons, as I say. After I finish talking to you, you will be free to go. You have been awarded a whole holiday. Undeserved, perhaps, but a whole holiday nonetheless.
And what will happen tomorrow, Miss Smedley?
Tomorrow, a Mr. Trilling will arrive.
Is he to be our new governess?
Well, he might prefer it, Charlotte, if you refer to him as your tutor.
Tutor? That sounds grimmer than governess.
Will he be very strict with us?
Does he play cricket?
Children. Dear children.
Dear children. Oh, we had never been that before.
I know nothing about him. All I will say is this, that I hope you will be polite to him and pleasant to him, and will try and learn all that he asks you to learn. You're not stupid children, whatever I may have said in the past, and I hope also that I've not been too sharp with you, or seemed at all unkind. I just simply wanted... I simply wanted to get the best from you. And perhaps you will think of me sometimes, and perhaps you'll write to me, too.
Do you want me to write to you, Miss Smedley?
Oh, yes, Harold. Oh, yes, please.
But what about the spelling?
Oh, I shan't mind about that, I promise. Well, I think... that's all. That's all.
She had resorted to tears. She, an Olympian. She had laid down her thunderbolts, and she had wept. And this was a source of great grievance. Rules and precedents, after all, should be strictly observed. I mean, what would the Romans have thought, supposing Hannibal had cried? I trudged to the bedroom. I found Leotard, the acrobat, in a corner, poured out my complaint to him, and watched him as he went through a number of increasingly lethargic motions. Well, though Miss Smedley was soon to depart, Leotard, at least, would never leave me.
I thought you were happy she was going.
Yes, so did I. It's a wrong system, Harold. A wrong system altogether. People shouldn't leave when you've got used to them.
Pigs leave, and we love them. Pigs get killed.
Yes, Harold, they do. But pigs don't have much choice in the matter.
They're putting her bags and things on the cart.
Will you run the flag up now, or when she's left?
Not sure. We're going to have some rain, I think, and it's a new flag. It would be a shame if it got spoiled.
I've got the matches for the bonfire and the firecrackers.
Yes, well, don't touch a thing or you'll get your head smacked. She gave me a knife last birthday. It wasn't much of a knife, but I wish I hadn't lost it.
There's the cart. I can hear it scrunching on the gravel.
We looked at each other, and then turned and watched the cart. Soon it had disappeared through the gate, and the rumble of its wheels had died away. No flag floated defiantly from the hen house. No firecrackers proclaimed the passing of a dynasty.
I think I'll just have a walk on my own.
Yes, me too.
Boys,
Yes, Aunt Eliza.
Mr. Trilling arrives this morning.
Yes, Aunt Eliza.
You shall meet him at the station.
Yes, Aunt Eliza.
So, Edward and I walked to the station. Aunt Eliza, no doubt, had formed a fond idea that our shy, innocent characters would unfold themselves to Mr. Trilling during the journey back, and that an enduring friendship with our new tutor, springing from mutual respect, would inevitably ensue. A pretty fantasy.
I gather, Edward, that you are the eldest of the boys.
Yes?
The eldest and the wisest too, no doubt.
What?
I'm sure he is the wisest, sir. Oh, yes.
Oh, splendid, splendid.
Edward, being wise, had foreseen that of the 5 of us children he would have to bear the brunt of tutorial oppression. He was therefore determined to be as sulky and taciturn as common courtesy would permit, and it was left to me to be the purveyor of hollow civilities. But I began to realize, as the journey went on, that young Mr. Trilling, with his eager face and untidy hair, was not quite the arid, scholastic, severe disciplinarian that our imaginations had conceived him to be.
Charming, charming. Oh, look at that. Quite too delightful.
Mr. Trilling moved his head jerkily from side to side as we proceeded through the village. He made an imaginary spyglass out of his fist and squinted through it.
What an exquisite feature. 15th century? No. Yes, I do believe it is. Charming.
Yes.
I hadn't anticipated this sort of thing, and glanced at Edward for conversational assistance. But my brother had taken his negative line and was determined to stick to it.
Ah, look at that field, backed by the downs, with the rain cloud brooding over it. That's David Cox, every bit of it.
Actually, sir, that field belongs to Farmer Larkin.
A perfect, quite perfect pastoral scene. The fields, the farmsteads, nature and rustic architecture in happy union.
Edward glanced at me, as if to say, "What sort of lunatic have we got here?" What sort, indeed? The fields and the farms, of which I knew every blade and brick, had done nothing to deserve being spoken of in this ridiculous way. The fields were fields, and the farms were farms, and there was an end of it.
You can see the house now, and that's Selina chasing the donkey in the paddock. Or is it the donkey chasing Selina?
Exquisite, divine, so harmonious, so in keeping.
I could see from Edward's face that we were in complete agreement as to who ought to be in keeping, and where.
Oh, such exciting possibilities in those ancient gables.
If you mean the garrets, sir, there's a lot of unwanted furniture in them, and apples and bats sometimes, and we have to go up there with hairbrushes and things to drive them out, but that's all there is.
Oh, but surely it's not just bats that haunt those lofty chambers. Don't tell me there are no ghosts.
Ghosts?
As a subscriber to Psyche, a journal of the unseen, I tell you I shall be deeply disappointed if I learn that such a romantic pile does not have a nocturnal visitant or two.
Mr. Trilling, how do you do?
How do you do?
So pleased to see you. Did you have a good journey?
Splendid, splendid house.
Well, I hope you find it comfortable enough and
journey,
warm
thank
enough.
you. Delightful.
Please come in.
After you.
After you. We've prepared the blue room.
The blue room. The blue room sounds divine.
That night the wind was fierce. It rumbled in the chimney, whistled in the keyhole, and rattled the windows. It woke us all up, and since we were certain that we wouldn't get back to sleep again, we wondered what we should do.
My view is we should explore.
We concurred. Edward straightway girt himself with a belt, into which he thrust a large stick. Then he donned a big slouch hat, formerly the property of Uncle Thomas, which was used for impersonating Guido Fawkes in a cellar and Charles II up a tree. Edward always liked to dress for his parts.
Now come on, Jewel. Be silent as we make our way through the house. Remember that Aunt Eliza sleeps with an open door, and Aunt Maria barely sleeps at all.
Yes, but we could always take a shortcut through the Blue Room.
The Blue Room? Of course, I forgot about that.
A journey via the Blue Room would enable us to get to the stairway without passing the lairs wherein our respective dragon aunts lay crouched. This route, therefore, we selected. We entered the room. It was dark, save for a strip of moonlight on the floor.
Look! Look at me! Look at me!
And Selina stepped into the moonlight and peacocked, posed and danced in her new white dressing gown. But this piece of exuberance seemed to throw down a challenge to Edward's histrionic instincts. Without invitation or prompting, he leapt onto Selina's stage.
Treacherous, deceitful woman.
No, not I.
Say our prayers, for you must die.
And with a magnificent gesture, he drew forth his stick.
Oh, horrors! Oh, Sir Godfrey, spare me!
But Sir Godfrey could not be appeased. He slew the treacherous, deceitful woman, and with help from his page boys and page girl, he carried her corpse from the chamber.
Mr. Trilling was very quiet at breakfast.
He didn't say a word.
And he didn't eat his porridge.
Well, I wouldn't if I was grown up.
We were in the schoolroom. We were waiting for our very first lesson under Mr. Trilling's tutorship. We'd been waiting a full 10 minutes, and were beginning to grow restless. Miss Smedley, in all the eons during which she had been our governess, had never once been late.
I'll give him till 1:15, then I'm off.
And at that precise moment, the schoolroom door opened, and in came Aunt Eliza and Aunt Maria.
Children, listen carefully.
Are you listening carefully?
Good.
The situation
is this.
Mr. Trilling
has gone.
Gone?
Where?
Back
to the station.
Oh. Do you all have books to read?
Yes.
Good.
Read them.
Charlotte?
Yes?
Why are you crying?
She was crying, of course, because Mr. Trilling had left us. Though he had been in the house less than 24 hours, his departure to Charlotte was as much a cause for grief as Miss Smedley's. As to why he had gone, on that matter our aunts were brutally uncommunicative, though Aunt Eliza was overheard to remark that she thought the man must be deranged, a view with which we were only too ready to concur. It was Uncle Thomas who revealed the truth.
He was driven out, he said, by spirits.
Spirits?
Yes. And not the sort you drink. Spectres, phantoms.
Where?
In the Blue Room.
In the Blue Room? Is that where Mr. Trilling was sleeping?
It was. Apparently, he has an academic interest in ghostly apparitions, but first-hand experience was just a little too exciting for him. Foolish man. And what a tedious, unimaginative tale it was he told me. All the old material, the haunted chamber, the white lady, the murder reenacted. Straight out of a Christmas number, of course.
Yes, of course.
At first, our aunts attempted to continue our education themselves.
Quiet, children! Quiet! This morning, I'm going to tell you about the Plantagenets.
We've done them.
Oh.
Edward I was the hammer of the Scots.
And King John died to sore feet.
A surfeit.
You see, we've learned all about the Plantagenets.
That's as maybe, but I'm going to tell you about them anyway.
Aunt Maria, should we call you Aunt Maria or Miss?
In less than a week, the aunts contrived to find more pressing matters to attend to. For a while, therefore, we were free, and I got my education from walking down lanes and across fields. One morning, I remember, I came across a hedgehog lying dead in my path. A sorry sight for one who had known the fellow in more bustling circumstances. I suppose that Nature might at least have paused to shed a tear or two over this rough-jacketed little son of hers, for his wasted aims, his cancelled ambitions, his whole career of usefulness cut suddenly short. But not a bit of it. Jubilant as ever, nature's song went bubbling on, and death in life and life in death were its alternate themes. All things must change. That was the lesson I was beginning to learn. All things, even childhood, the age of gold, sooner or later, must give way to that of a baser metal.
I have summoned you all to the potato cellar because of a serious turn of events. Something's up. Something fishy's going on.
Yes, there's no doubt about it.
Letters have been going to and fro.
Uncle Thomas has been going to and fro.
I saw one of the letters. Well? It fell out of the letter bag and Aunt Maria told me to put it back.
Well?
I didn't read the whole address, but I think it said the headmaster's office.
The headmaster's office?
We must find out more.
That's right, we must. We must listen at doors and sort through the letter bag. One way or another, we shall learn the truth.
We listened at doors. We sorted through the letter bag, with disappointing results. The discovery, when we made it, came at the breakfast table.
Show Eliza the letter, Tom, if you would.
It's a lot of money.
A lot more than he's worth, if you were to ask me.
Well, the other school... L'autre école was significantly cheaper.
True, but they won't take him until the autumn.
Pass the milk, will you, Selina?
Certainly, Edward.
Thank you.
Not at all.
The Olympians, as you will by now be aware, had the fatuous notion that, being Olympians, they could publicly discuss matters which they preferred us not to know about, in the expectation that we idiots would be unable to put two and two together. They might perhaps make a superficial attempt to conceal vital details, but provided we adopted a studious pretense of inattention and apathy, the truth would eventually come our way.
Will he be required to sit on examination?
Fortunately, no. Otherwise, I think there would be no hope for us.
Oh, we can't wait till the autumn.
I agree.
In my opinion, he's had far too much of a good time already.
That's my opinion too. He has played enough.
Life is real. Life is earnest.
Exactly.
So, à l'école.
You must tell me, Martha.
Oh, must I, my dear?
It's only fair. He needs to be put out of his misery.
Of course, I might not mind going to school at all, but I think I ought to be told if it's me that's going.
Well, I'm sure you will be told, in good time.
Aha, so it is Edward, and he is being packed off to school.
Now, I didn't say that.
When am I to go?
In 3 weeks' time, my dear.
3 weeks?
Oh, Edward, come here. It's very, very cruel, and I will miss you so.
We knew it might happen sometime, this strange thing called school, but we had never seriously set ourselves to consider what it meant. Edward, it seemed to me, was rather ambivalent about this big adjustment to his life. One day he would be swaggering around with his chest stuck out, the next he would be subdued and would seek the society of his sisters or Martha. But when his school uniform arrived and his trunk, he became another person altogether. He was one who belonged to the future, while the rest of us was still claimed by the past.
Oh, this is where you are.
Yes, this is where I am. So, young fella, what do you think?
Of the uniform or the trunk?
Both.
Very fine.
All my school clothes have got my name on in what's called a cursive script.
All right.
And my trunk's got my name on too, in great big letters. Look!
Oh, yes.
Rather pleasing to find one's name in print.
Yes, I'm sure it must be.
Would you mind awfully passing me my hat, please?
Sorry?
My new school hat, if you'd be so kind.
An unnatural aura had begun to appear around Edward. He was dignified and frighteningly polite. Conversation, which before was effortless, now was strained and stilted. There was a gulf which had opened up between Edward and those who were to be left behind, and this gulf had grown impossibly large. To tell the truth, it was a relief when the final day came, and we found ourselves on the station platform.
How much longer?
5 minutes, if that.
Of course, you could always run away.
What, now, you mean, or when I'm there? Charlotte, why aren't you snivelling?
I snivelled a lot this morning. I'm not sure I've got any snivels left.
I'll make sure that Charlotte feeds your rabbit while you're away and cleans the cage. And I'll ask Farmer Larkin not to kill any more pigs for a while.
Thank you. And in return, dear boy, I'll send you a catapult. A proper one, I mean. The real lethal article. I know why you've all come to see me off. You want to make sure I don't miss the train. Can't wait to get rid of me.
We chuckled at the jest as best we could, peered down the line for any sign of an approaching train, then stood round and stared in silence at the brother who was about to be sacrificed. Edward read both sides of his ticket very carefully and shifted it to each of his pockets in turn. He chinked his coins. At last...
Here it comes. Shall I take your suitcase?
No thanks, I can manage that.
I'll feed your rabbit.
I know.
And I'll be nice to your mice.
Impetuously, we leapt on board the train, each seeking the one peerless carriage to which Edward might be entrusted with the greatest comfort and honour.
This one's good.
This is the best.
Here we are. In here, Edward. Quick.
Come on.
Hurry up.
Edward!
The train was girding itself for departure, and we who were seeing Edward off were all aboard, while the intended traveller was still on the platform, deciding where he should get on, or even perhaps if he should get on at all. The porter settled the matter by heaving him through the nearest door, and the rest of us jumped off. And as the train moved away, Edward's face was thrust out of the window, wearing on it a top-quality grin that he'd been saving up for this supreme moment. A grin that was stoutly maintained, I'm certain, till a curve in the track swept him from our sight. And he was borne away into the busy world of rubs and knocks and competition. Life would never be the same, either for him or for us.
We haven't got a leader now.
That's true.
Perhaps we don't need a leader.
Perhaps.
But I don't know. If we had a leader, things might get organised more.
Some things, yes. Harold, what are you doing?
I'm walking down Pall Mall. I'm going to my club, one of my many clubs. Here we are. Up the stairs, and I sit here. And I talk with my friend William Makepeace, and I read the Times, and I cheat at cards, and drink a lot of port. Of course, Selina's not interested.
In the club?
No, in being leader. All she likes to do these days is read that wretched magazine she gets.
The Young Ladies' Journal?
That's it. And she goes out to tea with other young ladies. I can't understand why people go to tea. They're not poor. They can have their own tea at home, surely. And they can drink out of saucers and suck their fingers and have much more fun.
You haven't any plans, have you, for becoming leader, I mean?
Me, leader?
You're very young, of course.
It's not that so much. I don't think I would have the time.
Ah.
A leader needs to put a lot of thought into leading. He has to plan and such like. Me, I'm at one of my many clubs most days. No, actually, I rather expected our next leader to be you.
Yes, I suppose I ought to have expected the same. The position would have had its advantages, not least the prestige that went with it, but, to be honest, I felt no need, no urge to be a leader. Growing older, as I seem to have done following Edward's departure, I frequently found that the solitude of my thoughts and dreams was all that I craved.
All roads lead to Rome.
Miss Smedley used to say as much, and this road led there, I was certain. The local byways of our neighbourhood might tempt one with treasures of hedge and ditch, but this road, which marched straight and full to the open downs, was of a sterner sort, and had a serious purpose.
It's the Knight's Road.
That's what we called it. Along this road, at any time, Sir Lancelot and his peers might come prancing on their great war horses.
Of course, I won't get to Rome this afternoon, but another day I'll set off very early and I'm bound to get there then.
What Rome had to offer, I wasn't quite sure. The Colosseum, that was definitely there, but the rest I had to patch up with public houses and chapels from the little grey market town where twice a year we went to have our hair cut. And while I was engaged in this task, I suddenly noticed...
An artist?
He was by the roadside, seated at his easel and gazing out onto the large juniper-studded spaces of the downs. I knew I hadn't to bother him with questions or look over his shoulder and breathe in his ear, so I squatted down on the grass and stared at him. And stared.
Fine afternoon we're having.
Yes.
Going far today?
I was thinking of walking to Rome, but I've put it off.
Pleasant place, Rome. You'll like it. But I wouldn't go this time of year. It's too jolly hot.
You haven't been to Rome, have you?
Rather. I lived there.
You live there?
That's right.
You don't really, do you?
Oh, yes. I've a sort of shanty there. But I live in other places, too. I have digs off Piccadilly. That's in London, you know. I'm a sort of Ulysses, seen men and cities. The only place I never got to was the Fortunate Islands.
I'd like to live in a city where you walk in at the gate and you find the shops are full of beautiful things, and you just take what you want because it's all free, and you choose your own house and do exactly as you like, and you invite your friends to the city so they can choose their houses too, but you don't invite your relations.
Ah, I see. And what do you call this city of yours? Something cloudy and cuckooey, perhaps. Who else lives there, I wonder?
Well, Sir Lancelot.
Sir Lancelot, of course.
He didn't really die, you see. He went and lived in my city. And so did all those men in the stories who never married the princess.
And what about other people who don't quite get it right? People who try hard like the rest, but who break down, or are bowled over in the melee. They'll be allowed in, I hope?
Yes, if you like. If they're friends of yours.
The shadows had lengthened uncannily. A tide of evening haze was flooding the surface of the downs, and the artist began to prepare to leave.
I've enjoyed our conversation. An interesting subject you've started. And we haven't nearly exhausted it. We shall meet again, I hope.
I hope so too.
In Rome, perhaps.
Or Picky, that other place.
Or else, of course, in your very own and golden city.
Yes, of course.
Keep a lookout for me there, and give me a shout when you see me.
Yes, I'll do that.
Upon this compact we parted, and as I headed back to the house, I found myself in low spirits. How was it, I wondered, that all my notions seemed so natural and sensible to the artist, while other grown-ups took them for tomfoolery? Well, my new friend would be able to explain it, no doubt, and much more, and it wouldn't be too long, surely, before we met again.
A letter from Edward! Come on then, bring it here!
This wasn't the first time that Edward had corresponded. Strange, blotched dispatches he had written, scattered with schoolboy expressions whose meaning we could only guess at, and containing references to curiously named positions that he had taken up on the rugby field. This letter, though, this, the girls declared, would be a special letter. A week ago, a hamper had been sent to Edward containing not only many eatables, but also a drawing by Charlotte of a pig, not yet slaughtered, and a pair of mittens purchased out of her own pocket money by Selina, and now Edward had sent his declaration of gratitude.
Well, open the thing.
Yes. I hope the mittens were big enough. Hamper arrived. Jam and biscuits and cake were DBG. DBG, what's that again?
Damn bloody good, we decided.
Right. Tell aunts no more supplies needed for the moment, but 5 bob in postage stamps would come in very handy.
Go on.
That's it, Charlotte. That's all he's written.
Nothing about my picture?
No. Nothing about the picture. Nothing about the mittens. Try not to cry.
To Harold and me, the letter seemed natural and sensible enough at the time. Provisions and funds, they were the chief concern, surely. But I suppose that even I, and discerning as I was, could see that this brief missive was a portent of how our lives were to be. We were moving apart. We were moving on. The dream was disappearing. A while later, when Uncle Thomas brought us his good news, my vague, unformulated fears became more real.
Now, children.
Yes, Uncle Thomas.
Concerning the toys.
The toys? Which particular toys, Uncle Thomas?
All the toys.
What is to happen to them?
They are to go to London tomorrow. I've packed them up in a crate.
We felt indignant, betrayed, sullen to the verge of mutiny. Though my official position with regard to the toys was that I had progressed beyond them, even beyond Leotard the acrobat, I found it hard not to share in the sense of cruel injustice.
Have none of them escaped?
I don't think so. Oh, your catapults, perhaps?
Well, yes, they're weapons, not toys, hardly suitable for the orphans of London. What about Leotard?
You know, Uncle Thomas must have gone round and captured everything this morning while we were in the garden.
Yes.
The brute! The brute!
Yes, what about Leotard?
He's gone.
Oh dear.
The day passed in an ominous peacefulness. We read books. These, at least, had not been kidnapped, and we fitfully drew on the fly-leaves. We skulked in separate corners, void of conversation, oppressed by the lowering tidiness of the universe. Those toys, they had grown up with us, shared our joys and our sorrows. They were part of the old order of things, of our earthly paradise. How would the world continue to go round if Leotard wouldn't?
If you want my opinion,
yes, Harold?
We can't carry on like this. It isn't right. I say we have a meeting in the potato cellar.
Strictly speaking, Harold lacked the seniority to request such a meeting, but my concern for the toys encouraged me to waive protocol. Besides, there was an urgency about my brother which brooked no argument. The life of the card player and wine bibber had taken an earnest turn.
Something must be done, and soon. I'm not saying the orphans in London don't deserve toys, but they won't like ours half as much as we do.
And they'll give them all the wrong names.
And anyway, they're ours.
That's right.
Harold, Charlotte, we can't stop them being taken. The crate's all packed and ready to go.
We could unpack the crate.
But then Uncle Thomas would know because the crate wouldn't weigh anything.
Well then, we'll save some of the toys. We'll stay awake tonight. We'll go down and we'll open up the crate. And we'll take just a few out, small toys.
But if they're found...
They won't be found. We'll bury them.
Harold was busy and determined in the intervening hours. With Martha's help, he obtained a hammer and a chisel, and he placed a small spade near to the intended burial site. He also drew up what he called a death letter, which he showed to me in the seclusion of the garden.
Everyone should write one, you know, before they die. Are you thinking of dying?
Well, who can say what will happen tonight? It might be very dangerous. Go on, you have my permission to read it.
To Charlotte, I leave my pictures, my plants in pots, and everything I have, your loving brother, Amen.
I was going to leave Selina my plants, but she and I argued yesterday, so she gets nothing now.
To Edward, I leave my watch and compass and mice and everything I have, your loving brother, Amen.
I, too, was a beneficiary. Harold's pencil case and rabbit, and indeed everything he had, was to come my way. It must be conceded, I suppose, that Harold's document deviated in significant respects from the form of last will and testament normally adopted by solicitors of repute, the only resemblance perhaps lying in the absence of punctuation. But the whole enterprise, I think, was worthy of high praise.
It was jolly good of you, Harold, to prepare for the worst.
Thank you.
But despite the dangers, I think you'll live.
Wake up, wake up! It's all right, I wasn't asleep. Is it late enough yet?
Yes, it's late enough. Well, are you coming?
The hour was a little before midnight. Harold and Charlotte led the way. Humbly, almost timidly, Selina and I followed in the wake of these purposeful, remorseless young persons. Through the blue room, haunted by the timorous shade of Mr. Trilling, down the stairs, past the picture of St. Jerome, down towards the hall. There, in the gloom, stood the grim crate, in which so large a portion of our past lay entombed.
Right then. Hammer, please, Charlotte. Chisel, please, Charlotte.
You'll have to be very quiet.
Yes, yes. Shall I do it? No, thank you.
Shush.
Shh. There.
Selina and I stood by while the other two plunged their arms into the crate and probed and grappled.
This is Rosa. I know the feel of her hair. Do you want Rosa?
Yes, please, give me Rosa.
Rosa was dragged forth, quite unmoved, apparently, by all this turmoil, and Charlotte retired with her to the foot of the stairs.
I found the ark.
You better not take the whole thing. Just a creature or two.
Well, here's one. The elephant, it must be. The large beetle with the red stomach. And Potiphar the bull.
He handed me the elephant, and the beetle, and Potiphar the bull.
Now, what's this? It's got sharp corners, rather large. It must be Leotard.
Leotard.
Too big. You'll have to stay in the crate.
Yes. Yes. Oh, well.
Poor Leotard. I didn't protest, of course, but I thought I heard from the crate a feeble, strangled cry, a faint appeal from the faithful acrobat. Oh, rescue me from the orphans of London. Rescue me.
That's deep enough, isn't it?
No, just a bit more.
We don't want the grown-ups to find them, ever.
We stand at the farthest hedge, between the garden and the outer world. Everything has an unfamiliar night aspect, which turns the flower beds and clumps and bushes and the high-standing elms into strange, foreign things. It is midnight land.
There, that's good. Give me Rosa.
Into the soil goes Rosa, and she is laid stiffly out. Her cherry cheeks look pale in the moonlight, but her smile, as always, is brave and triumphant and undaunted.
Potiphar next.
The once proud bull bows his head and lies meekly on his side. The elephant and the beetle snuggle down as best they can. We make no speeches, no prayers are said. The ceremony is simple and natural and right. It needs no justifying. Though Jerry might shed his limbs and his stuffing in some unruly corner of the metropolis, Rosa's book is closed. Though Noah's Ark, with its cargo of sad-faced refugees, might float upon the face of London's murky waters, 3 of its previous occupants have missed the boat forever.
The earth is shoveled in and stamped down. We turn to go, and the man in the moon, tangled in elm boughs, catches my eye for a moment. He has never looked so friendly. He'll take care of those buried toys. It'll be no trouble at all. He'll tell them what's going on up here.
But an anxious thought strikes me as I return to the house and climb back into bed.
Perhaps Harold was right to compose his death letter.
Perhaps now that we are torn from our toys, our old life, our golden age, will be no more. And part of us will die, and life henceforth will be real and earnest, as Uncle Thomas always said it would.
Perhaps someday I will become an Olympian too. Is it possible?
The Golden Age by Kenneth Grahame was dramatised for radio by Martin Wade. The man was played by James Fleet, and as a boy by Jessie Jearn. Miss Smedley was played by Marcia Warren, Charlotte by Alexandra Stone, Harold by Harry Francis, Edward by Oliver Cookson, and Selina by Teresa Gallagher. Uncle Thomas was played by David Timpson, Aunt Eliza by Anne Beach, Aunt Maria by Patience Tomlinson, Mr. Hodgetts and the Artist by Ian Masters, Uncle William and Mr. Trilling by Gerard McDermott, and Martha and Medea by Hannah Dee. The music was specially composed by Elizabeth Parker. The Golden Age was directed by Cherry Cookson.